Right, short and sweet for the intro. You've got a super close quarters hit and run playstyle, dipping in and out of invis constantly, whilst having amazing ability cooldowns, pseudo blind through disorient, and fast charging supers that last ages too. This build has that assassin fantasy that I felt Night Stalkers were really missing. And I can't believe I'm about to say this, Spectral blades actually felt great. Not amazing, it still has a few problems, but it at least felt good, and its extended damage is genuinely high as far as super damage goes. Let's get into it. And I don't know what this genre of music is really called, but it felt like the right thing here, so I'ma roll with it. Here's a quick build. On the prowl, Stylish Executioner, Gambler's Dodge, Snare Bomb, and Vortex Grenade. Echo of Expulsion, Harvest, Starvation, Reprisal, Persistent, but the fragments are flexible. This is your mod setup, but I'll go over an alternate version afterwards, and your exotic armor's Gwisin vest. Your weapons are flexible, including your exotic, but anything that has Repulsor Brace, Withering Gaze, Demoralize, or Destabilizing rounds is great to get stylish online. Let's actually talk about what you're doing first, because the playstyle here is pretty unique. You're wanting to keep your fights super up close. Our star exotic is Gwisin Vest, which got buffed to drop a smoke when exiting invis near an enemy, but it's only effective if we drop it right on top of them, which is why we gotta be up close. Just outside of melee range is the distance this build loves to fight at, and we get away with fighting so close to enemies because every smoke we make, whether it's Snare Bomb, Gwisin, or on the prowl, all of them will apply Disorient, which is really similar to Blind apart from that it won't affect champs, apart from kinda slowing them down a bit. You'll see in pretty much every one of my one-on-one fights that I'm really not getting shot back at because of how much Disorient I'm able to make through smokes, but also how quickly I'm going in and out of invis. A big part of making that happen is Stylish Executioner, where we kill a void debuff target and go invis, and when invis, our next melee applies Weaken and deals bonus damage, which is nice for retriggering Stylish in a pinch. On the prowl is the new kid on the block and our second aspect, and it's doing a lot here too for keeping us slinky. When you go invis, you mark a target, kill that target, they drop a smoke that makes you invis when going through it. Killing a marked target gives weapon buffs and around 10% energy for all your base abilities. And a heads up, you can only ever have one marked target at a time. There's no going invis twice and marking two different targets. Once they're marked, you've got to kill that target before another one can be. So, let's talk your gameplay loop. Start your combo by getting a void debuff kill, and you go invis from Stylish. Now you'll get your first on the prowl target, you have a Gwisin smoke ready, plus a weakening melee from Stylish. Hop out from invis near an enemy, Gwisin goes off debuffing them, kill them, go back invis, or you can kill your marked target for an on the prowl invis. And from there you just keep the combos going, making sure that you always land a kill against a weakened enemy. Smoke is like your best friend here. Stay close to it and it'll do wonders for you. If you play around those smokes right, you should always be getting back into invis on landing a kill, and that means you should have access to loads of Gwisin smokes, making the playstyle even safer. It is an understatement to say this build has good survivability. It has some of the best I've used. It's so difficult to die when you know that you always have both easy access to invis and easy access to Disorient. The build serves those to you on a silver platter for free, and I promise it's only getting reckless with the build that'll get you in dangerous situations. For the rest of the kids, I normally recommend using Gamblers. If you ever lose your invis chain, having access to Gamblers means you're one dodge away from a Snare Bomb for Weaken, making getting back into that loop easier. Vortex Grenade is nice for just good damage, plus it kind of drags enemies on top of the smoke if you do a Snare Bomb Vortex combo. Your super Spectral blades, which I'll talk about a little bit more in the gameplay tips. For fragments, they're pretty flexible, but there's three I'd really recommend here. Echo of Harvest and Echo of Starvation are the first two mandatory fragments. You kill a weakened enemy, you get a Void Breach and an Orb, and then on picking up an Orb or a Void Breach, you get Devour. So now on top of Disorient from your smokes, and invis from Stylish, and on the prowl, you get healing on kills and grenade energy. And the Void Breaches are pretty consistent here too. Almost everything you kill is weakened, so about every 4 seconds you're able to make a breach. Last of what I consider the mandatory fragments is Echo Reprisal, where you get bonus super energy on kills while surrounded. Probably don't need to explain why that one's a good one here. And for the rest of the kit, I'd recommend any of Exchange, Instability, Persistence, Expulsion, or Undermining. I've used all of them and they've all felt great no matter which one you run. If you really just want to hear me say use two specifically, I'm favouring Expulsion and Persistence, but again that's just personal preference, not the definitive best choices here. And the gameplay tips part. Aside from just playing up close, there's a few things to know that'll make using this build a bit more interesting. First is that every source of smoke you make in this build, whether it's on the prow, snare bomb or Gwisin, all count as power melee damage, meaning it'll trigger any mods, perks or fragments that mention melee damage or ability damage. Use this to your advantage. Any smoke will trigger fragments like Expulsion and Exchange, mods like Heavy Handed or Impact Induction. Triggering these becomes super reliable from how much power melee damage you've got going on in the build. Speaking of smoke, it's also important to know that Gwisin does have a built-in cooldown of 5 seconds for spawning in smoke. It's not long, but it's worth noting that not every invis exit is going to give a Gwisin smoke. And speaking of Gwisin, let's talk Spectral Blades. The exotic gives you refunded Spectral super energy on going invis, depending on how many light attack super hits or kills you get before doing so. But importantly, ongoing invis. You do not need to heavy attack to get that regen. Quite often you'll be able to find a marked on the prow target, kill them, and then save yourself the heavy attack super cost by just walking through your own smoke. Heavy attacks are around, if not exactly 15% super energy, so if you look for other ways of going invis during the super, you kind of save that energy to just be used for more light attacks, which lets you squeeze out a little bit more damage. You don't always have to heavy attack to go invis, but if you don't have to, you get more bang for your buck with your super. And quickly, let's talk about the cons of this build. 1. You do not have any DR. You have many ways to avoid death and sustain yourself, but if you get hit with something hard, you're gonna feel it. 2. This build requires you to be getting kills. You need kills to get stylish, which gets you Gwisin smoke. You have to kill weakened enemies. You need enemies to drop orbs to get access to Devour, with Devour itself needing, you guessed it, kills. Almost every interaction this build has involves killing an enemy, so if you find yourself struggling with that, this might not be the best build for you. 3. Range DPS, never heard of it before, and neither is this build. And lastly 4, and it's a biggin, it is very difficult to stun a champ, pop super, and kill that champ before it's able to either regen health or get damage resist back. Your super is kind of used specifically for chunking down bosses or doing air clear, but you're going to have to rely on teammates during your super to stun champs, or just not use it for killing champs at all. And its hit registration is so cheeks. Your Guardian becomes drunk as soon as he uses Spectral, because pretty often you just go flying past the enemy you're actually wanting to hit. Right, down to time over, here's your mod setup. There's 2 versions that I switch around depending on how many people I'm running a piece of content with, and the level of that content, with the real difference being your arm mods, being either triple heavy-handed, or a combination of bolstering detonation and focusing strike. First thing is that Spectral kills are counted as melee kills, meaning that they're proc heavy-handed, and your teammates will love you for this. Spectral becomes an orb-genning machine that just doesn't slow down if it's getting kills. On top of this, Gwisin smokes and on the prow smokes also can proc heavy-handed as they're coded as powered melees. This setup will make your teammates happy and give you very easy access to orbs, which will give you Devour and obviously just the super energy. On top of that, Expulsion if triggered by a melee, so in this case Gwisin, Snare Bomb and on the prow, will count as melee damage and trigger heavy-handed too. So basically, if you're with teammates and you're confident in landing consistent melee kills, heavy-handed is the version for you. If not, you want some combination of either bolstering detonation or impact induction. Here are the ability values for each mod. They have a 7-second cooldown on triggering and are both procced on dealing melee damage. You want pure grenade energy, triple bolstering, pure class ability energy, triple focusing strike. Want a combination of both? I ain't stopping you. The nice thing from these mods though is that they're guaranteed to be proccing on that 7-second timer from all your smokes, and you don't have to think about triggering them either. They're just going to go from the start. Plus, they also don't need kills, so it's less effort to trigger than heavy-handed. For the rest of it, you want Harmonic Siphon on the helmet, and a special ammo or heavy ammo finder. Arms are, as we've just talked about, chest is a Void Reserves mod, and then damage resist mods, legs is double absolution and a recuperation, class item is special ammo finisher, Reaper, and powerful attraction. And last but not least, your weapons, and you've got a great selection here. First up, for your legendaries, I said it before, Withering Gaze, Demoralize, Destabilizing Rounds are great to get stylish online, and Repulsor Brace for Overshield for a bit of survivability can be nice too. For specific weapon archetypes though, look for your close-up ones. Shotguns and fusion rifles are natural pairings for the build, as they work at the exact distance you're wanting to play this build at. Otherwise, anything else can really go, but those are definitely my recommendations. For your exotics, there's some you should definitely try out here. Fire of One with Destabilizing, Slayer's Fang with Repulsor, a Collective Obligation could even work here, Fighting Lion, Void Hardlights, Leviathan's Breath, Terministic Chaos, Heart Shadow. There's a lot of stuff that has synergy with the build and that can work here. As usual though, I'm not your parents, so I'm not going to tell you what you can and can't do. And seasonal artifact mods. If it's not Heresy, you can skip ahead, otherwise, there's some amazing Void stuff here. Volatile Monksman's your first, where you get volatile rounds on landing Void precision hits, or getting rapid Void kills. Malign Harvest causes a weakening burst when applying volatile multiple times in a row. And Void Flux is the big one here, where on killing a weakened enemy with a Void weapon, they'll inflict volatile to anything around them. For the build whose whole thing is weakening, you can probably see why it's worth running this. Outside of that, there's nothing mandatory, those three and you'll pretty much just be set. And that's the build. Just on a final note, this build is great, but it really feels like it needs a few quality of life changes and buffs to be really good. The hit registration on Spectral has been rubbish for ages. I would genuinely love to see that adjusted. And I'd also really like to see a specific tuning pass on Spectral's damage against champions, so I don't get into these staring competitions with champs, because neither of us can hurt the other. I also would love at some point for Bungie to look at Void's champ stunning abilities, because right now they feel lackluster. Suppression is so rare to find for a keyword that's not actually all that impactful. I'd love for all classes to see suppression just tied into their kits more, plus that'd make Void better for overload stunning. Void also has Barrier Breaker and Volatile Rounds, but outside of Gerfalcons and Echo of Instability, it might as well not. It's not Volatile that breaks shields, but Volatile Rounds that does, and it's not easy to access specifically Volatile Rounds. Again, I'd love for Bungie to maybe look at Void's champ interactions and give them a bit of love, but for the build itself, it feels fun and plays well, and that's really all that matters for the time being. I hope you enjoyed, but that's about it from me. So,